On January 11, 2017, the United States charged Volkswagen AG with conspiracy to defraud the United States. The charge included wire fraud, violation of the Clean Air Act, obstruction of justice, and entry of goods by false statements. This was not a traffic ticket. This was a federal indictment against the second-largest car manufacturer in the world. The central tension began years earlier, rooted in a specific ambition. Volkswagen wanted to dominate the U.S. diesel market. They aimed to capture green-conscious consumers by offering high-performance, clean-burning engines. The promise was simple: power without compromise, efficiency without penalty. Martin Winterkorn, the CEO who cultivated a culture of fear and perfection, steered this vision. Under his leadership, engineering teams were pressured to meet impossible emissions targets. The culture demanded results that defied the physical limits of the time's technology. The fatal misread was subtle but catastrophic. Volkswagen believed that software could bridge the gap between laboratory test results and real-world driving emissions. They assumed code could solve a chemical problem. This assumption led to the first big bet, a strategic pivot to diesel in the United States. The goal was to sell approximately 590 vehicles using technology that promised compliance. The scheme relied on the idea that regulators would only see what was programmed for them to see. The hidden weakness emerged quickly. It was physically impossible to meet strict U.S. NOx standards while maintaining the desired performance metrics. Engineers hit a wall. The engine could either be clean or it could be powerful. It could not be both, not yet. This engineering deadlock created a pressure cooker within the Wolfsburg headquarters. Teams reported upward with bad news. The culture did not reward honesty. It rewarded compliance with the impossible mandate. James Robert Liang, a Volkswagen engineer, found himself at the center of this deadlock. He pleaded guilty on September 9, 2016, to one count of conspiracy to defraud the United States. His charge also included wire fraud and violation of the Clean Air Act. Liang devised the cheat because he had no other option. The defeat device was a software solution to an engineering failure. It allowed the cars to pass tests by detecting when they were being monitored. The darkest moment arrived in the code itself. Volkswagen agreed to deceive U.S. regulators and customers about whether certain vehicles complied with U.S. emission standards from approximately May 2006 to approximately November 2015. The deception was not accidental. It was a deliberate scheme to sell these vehicles. The criminal charges arose from this plan to market 590 zero-diesel cars as clean when they were not. The discovery did not happen in Wolfsburg. It happened across the Pacific, in laboratories operated by the California Air Resources Board and the U.S. EPA. They noticed discrepancies between test track data and real-world exhaust output. The regulators sent a formal request for information. Volkswagen's response was incomplete. The discrepancy grew larger with every test cycle. Internal documents later revealed that engineers knew the defeat device was active. They designed it to lower NOx emissions only during testing conditions. On the road, the emissions spiked. Giovanni Pamio, formerly the head of thermodynamics within Audi's diesel engine development department in the Karlsruhe, Germany, was charged on July 6, 2017. His charge stemmed from his role in the conspiracy to defraud U.S. regulators. The scope of the conspiracy extended beyond Volkswagen's walls. IAV GmbH, a German company that engineers and designs automotive systems, was charged on December 18, 2018. They were accused of conspiracy to defraud the United States and Volkswagen AG's U.S. customers. IAV GmbH agreed to pay a $35 million criminal penalty as a result of its role in the long-running scheme. This fine underscored that the fraud required external partners to function. 6 Volkswagen executives, including Richard Dorenkamp, Heinz-Jakob Neusser, Jens Hadler, Bernd Gottweiss, Oliver Schmidt, and Jürgen Peter, were indicted on January 11, 2017. These charges were part of the same initial wave that targeted the corporation. Martin Winterkorn was not indicted immediately. He remained CEO until September 2015, when he resigned following the initial disclosure of irregularities. His departure was framed as a resignation, not a firing. The narrative of his exit shifted over time. More evidence linked the highest levels of management to the knowledge of the cheat. The culture of fear was not just about pressure, it was about concealment. On May 3, 2018, a fifth superseding indictment was unsealed. It added Martin Winterkorn to the charges. The indictment alleged that he knew of the defeat devices and did nothing to stop them. The contradiction in Winterkorn's legacy was stark. He had built a company that became the largest automotive manufacturer by global sales in 2016 and 2017, yet that same company was caught running a criminal conspiracy. The juxtaposition of market dominance and ethical collapse defined the scandal. The financial consequences began to accrue rapidly. In June 2016, Volkswagen agreed to a settlement of up to $14 to resolve allegations related to the emissions scandal. This settlement was only the beginning. The criminal penalties would dwarf the civil costs. The U.S. government was not interested in a handshake deal. They wanted a plea agreement. Volkswagen AG pleaded guilty to conspiracy to defraud the United States, wire fraud, violation of the Clean Air Act, obstruction of justice, and entry of goods by false statements. The plea agreement required full cooperation in the Justice Department's investigation. This meant internal files, emails, and engineering logs were handed over to federal prosecutors. As part of this agreement, Volkswagen AG agreed to pay a $2.8 billion penalty. This $2.8 billion criminal penalty was a line item in the plea deal, distinct from the billions in civil settlements. It marked the cost of admitting guilt to federal crimes. The agreement also mandated 3 years of probation. During this probation, Volkswagen would be under an independent corporate compliance monitor for at least 3 years. The company lost its autonomy to oversee its own ethics. The total financial hit exceeded $30 billion. Volkswagen $30 billion, 26,600 was fined over US $100 26,000 related to the emissions scandal. This figure included fines and buyback cost. It was the price of a strategy built on deception. The scandal revealed a fundamental flaw in the approach to engineering. Volkswagen tried to code their way out of a physics problem. They treated emissions standards as software bugs rather than chemical realities. The culture that enabled this was one of obedience. Engineers who raised concerns about the impossibility of meeting standards were ignored or pressured. The defeat device was a symptom, not the disease. James Robert Liang's role illustrates this dynamic. He was an engineer tasked with solving an unsolvable problem. His solution was criminal because the corporate structure offered no legal alternative. The US market was critical to Volkswagen's growth. They saw diesel as the key to American success. The pivot to diesel was not a minor adjustment. It was a strategic bet on national identity. American consumers associated diesel with efficiency and cleanliness, at least until the scandal broke. Volkswagen leveraged this perception to gain market share rapidly. The defeat device allowed them to maintain this image. The cars performed well on paper and in test labs. On the road, they emitted pollutants at levels far above legal limits. The discovery by the California Air Resources Board shattered this illusion. Their testing methods were rigorous and independent. They could not be fooled by the software's detection algorithms. The EPA joined the investigation shortly after. The combined regulatory pressure Volkswagen's hand, they could no longer deny the discrepancies. Winterkorn's addition to the indictment in 2018 closed the loop on executive accountability. He was charged with conspiracy, moving the legal focus from negligence to alleged active participation. The scandal marked the end of an era for German auto industry invincibility. The $2.8 billion criminal fine and the 3-year probation signaled that no company was too big to fail morally. Volkswagen AG became the second largest manufacturer worldwide as of 2016, a status achieved through aggressive expansion and this controversial technology. Today, the question remains unresolved. When the laws of physics clash with corporate ambition, is it a failure of engineering or a failure of ethics? This ledger shows both.